There seems to be a growing feeling that we might see a resurgence of the virus this fall, and that would hit GDP, that would hit growth. You were very strong this morning in saying the U.S. in many places opened up too quickly.
The economy is very closely tied to how the path of the pandemic goes. And so in the talk that I gave, and the charts are available on the Boston Fed website, I looked at Europe versus the United States. Europe ended up taking a big hit because they had very significant shutdowns. But now they're out and about much more than in the United States because they've been able to control the pandemic better than the United States as a whole. I then compared the state patterns. And so what the state patterns show is that those regions of the country, particularly in the South and the West, that opened up very quickly and with somewhat abandon, ended up getting a short-term boost to their economy, but it also increased the infection rate quite significantly. And as the infection rate has increased, people have changed their behavior, and either through changes in state mandates or changes in people's behavior, they're doing less spending, they're less mobile than they were. And so you see in the data that the New England and Mid-Atlantic states are now doing better because they had a more significant shutdown and were more restrained in how they opened up. I think as we get into the fall, that's going to be an important lesson to learn, that we need to follow the data very closely on what's happening with the pandemic. And if there starts to be an increase, we need to take more significant changes either in our behavior or in the state requiring mandates that require that behavior.
Well, at least one of your colleagues has suggested the need for another lockdown. Would you go that far?
I think ideally it's much less costly to wear masks, to socially distance, to not be in big groups in poorly ventilated places. If we follow those guidelines, we can probably do less costly solutions than a shutdown. But if we don't either follow the guidelines by the CDC, and if the behavior doesn't change, in those parts of the country, the pandemic could quite possibly get severe enough that we run out of ICU units, and as a result of the capacity at the hospitals, have to actually shut down. I think there may be some regions of the country that are pretty close to that right now. I do think as the weather turns and it gets colder and schools are back in session, or at least some schools are back in session, the chance of the virus becoming more severe in the fall, I think, is substantial. I know the hospitals in the Boston area are preparing for another wave in the fall. I think that's probably true at most hospitals around the country. So I think this is a time to be quite vigilant. And I would highlight that being too relaxed now may have severe outcomes, both for the health and mortality of citizens, but also to the economy as well. So if you want a strong economy, we need to take actions against the pandemic that prevent the pandemic from shutting down the economy.